Okay, so I am Patrick McMahon, and I'm joined by Alexis Trevisono and Shay McKinney. Today we're going to talk about the Jamstack, and specifically the Giving to Stanford website project, which we launched this past January. So we're super excited about the results, and really happy to share a little bit of background around how we got to where we're at, and some of the decisions we made along the way to hopefully deliver a really impactful experience for donors who want to give to Stanford. So, okay, so in case you haven't seen the sites, you're more than welcome to go to giving.stanford.edu. Here's a little peek of what it looks like. I'm actually going to give a preview of 4 or 5 pages a little bit later, just so you can see it in the browser here, but you can also just go to it separately and follow along if you'd like. This is what it looks like from the home page. And this is us again. So I am the Director of Digital Strategy for the Office of Development, and work really closely with Alexis, who will be talking to us about content strategy and the design process for this project. Alexis is Assistant Director of Digital Experience, and Shay is joining us from Stanford Web Services, who is a technical architect, lead, and senior developer. So we'll be hearing from them next. So the path to this website, we started with a site that was over 8 years old, and it was kind of limping along on this often patched Drupal 7 setup. And so, I think in our favor, we felt the bar was pretty low to improve the user experience. But at the same time, we knew that we were inheriting a significant amount of technical and creative debt. So we knew we had to kind of rethink things, and we saw that as an opportunity as well. So before we really dug into the project, we had ideas about what we wanted to do, but we also spent a lot of time listening to our audience, and this included both Stanford donors and our fundraising staff. So we conducted interviews, surveys, and we analyzed a lot of the site use data from the previous website. So what we heard was really at its core, the site needed to provide access to information, and so including how to give, what to give to, and who to contact for help. We really heard that we needed this site to do a better job of inspiring our donors, and to be able to tell the story of the impact of giving to Stanford. And so previously, we just didn't really have an impactful way of telling that story online. We wanted to build trust, so we heard that from our donors that we needed to do a little better job of being more open and transparent about the process of giving to Stanford. And I think we also heard this feedback and interpreted it as well to mean that through a really warm and thoughtful user experience, that in itself would be a really powerful way for us to help build trust. And so that was an inspiration of ours. So lastly, it was clear that so many of Stanford's donors simply enjoyed the act of giving back to Stanford. And so we really wanted to celebrate and acknowledge their acts of generosity. So if anything, I think we just wanted people to feel a little bit of goodness and positivity when they came to the site. So hopefully we got there. Alrighty. Yeah, so we realized pretty early on that we didn't just need a website, but we actually needed to basically rethink our entire foundation for digital. And so this really began with digging into establishing our voice and tone. And so we created the voice and tone guide to make sure that our writing and photography was consistent and really donor-centric. So previously we'd been speaking in a very kind of internal voice, and we really wanted to make it much more warm and externally focused. So we also wanted to build a design system that would help us build future projects. And so, really closely aligning with the Stanford brand and building off the Decanter design system and front-end framework. That was a big goal of ours, just so that we could be in alignment with what the rest of campus was developing. And we also really wanted to create this new stack and a suite of components that could help us deliver on the web and also create a foundation for thinking beyond the browser someday. So just being a little bit more aspirational about, what we could do with this project, but then how can we use this to leverage what we might do in 5, 7, 10 years. So ideally, like bringing all these pieces together, we would be working in tight alignment with projects across not only the Office of Development, but the Stanford Alumni Association. And a lot of this work was done within the broader ADAPT effort, which is this massive multi-year digital transformation project, which is striving to replace a lot of aging systems. And so again, these pieces would be translated across a much broader system and connecting with our audience across all these different products. Okay, and going back to the website itself, we knew that we really just wanted to be a fast site. We wanted to be visually rich, but not be too sluggish. It had to be very flexible. So we really wanted a CMS that could let us create flexible layouts and leverage a component-based design system. And also the Office of Development, we have changing needs over time. And so, however Stanford is shifting its broader vision and goals, the development side really needs to be responsive to that and support, that emerging vision. Also, I'd say, with this flexibility, we were hoping to really nail our accessibility requirements. And so we did, I think, a great job at hitting those goals in the end. And that flexibility really, I think, helped us get there. So lastly, I think building a site that could also include a really fun editing experience. And I think fun is, it's hard to get there when we talk about working within a CMS interface, but that was one of our goals, is just, as much as we can make the content creation process as enjoyable as possible, great input would equal great output. And so I think just make the whole process of working on the web that much more enjoyable. So. All right. Yeah, so let me just see. I'm going to go on to actually give a little preview of the site. And if you can all still see this, so this is the homepage, and basically pretty typical, navigation, header, hero, sections. We wanted to include this I want to section, which would support multiple entry points for getting at content throughout the site. And we figured we could explore how people were engaging with this and switch it up over time. We also wanted to promote people and promote the stories that highlight the impact of giving to Stanford. And so we had a much nicer way of kind of surfacing that storytelling on this new site. And also make really clear call to actions. I mean, in the end, development is invested in encouraging people to give. And so we just want to make it really clear that this site had easy ways to make a donation. So we have lots of handy call to actions across the site to make it really easy to start your donation process. So that's the homepage. We have this areas to support section, and this is a way for us to organize the different areas to give to across the campus. It's not all inclusive, but it's a start for us to start to put some user-centric categories around these areas to support. So you can see here sustainability, for example. So this new taxonomy, we're able to carry this across into our stories as well, and it's kind of trying to connect a thread across the content throughout the site. Storytelling, something we weren't able to do very well in the past, and so we developed a suite of new templates that could support our storytelling better. And so you can see here we've got the ability to have more imagery and content. We have slideshows and videos and whatnot that we can also include in our story templates. So service being a really important aspect of this site, just getting people to the right people that they need to speak to is super important. But then we also really wanted to carry across our new voice and tone into our service facing content and just have it speak to people in a warm, friendly way. And so you can see how our voice and tone is kind of starting to carry across into some of our more service-oriented pages, and using a lot of verbs and action-oriented language to try and encourage people to reach out and connect with us. So definitely encourage you to explore the site, giving.stanford.edu, and of course, linking to it would be fabulous as well. I'm going to skip back to the presentation. So pulling this all together, we worked with a number of fantastic partners. I think end to end, it was about a year to make this project happen. We started working with Smith & Connors, an agency from Portland. So they helped craft our voice and tone and led some workshops with us. And I think Alexis is going to give a preview of some of that. And also helped us get on our way with our visual design direction. We ultimately brought a lot of that work over to Stanford Web Services, but we got started with Smith & Connors. The Office of Development, so we were really responsible for the strategy and vision, the writing, the design, and the creative assets. And Stanford Web Services, design, coding, technical architecture brilliance really helped bring this project together. So that was fantastic. And lastly, partnering with University IT, the business technology and services team, which supports external relations, and the Stanford Alumni Association. And together, that group really helped us in the process of evaluating our CMS options, and we came up with a really great solution there. So although we started working with an agency on this project, we pivoted midway and invested a lot more of our work with close alignment with Stanford Web Services. And I think part of this was to really bring us into alignment with the Stanford brand and the design system that is part of the Decanter suite. But also, I think our hope was that we could bring some new processes and approaches to the Stanford community and really enable others to leverage our learnings. And so, things that worked and things that didn't, we would hopefully, and through these really tight collaborations across campus, we would be able to talk about them today and show you what's been working, what hasn't, and if what we have done is a good fit for your project, then we'll have been through that already with some of these campus teams. So with that, I'm just going to actually pass the mic to Alexis. We'll talk a little bit about our content strategy for the site and the design process, and then Shay's going to follow up after Alexis. So I will stop my share and pass that over to Alexis.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I want to do just kind of a high level touch on the tools and techniques that we use to actually pull together the content and the design that we use to make the site a reality. So this was work Dresden Joswig and I led for about a year's time. So we start the journey in January 2020 with auditing the old site and really digging into that and the analytics and trying to get a good sense of what exists here that we want to keep, how are things working for us, what's not working, all of that kind of stuff. We also audited a lot of content beyond our website in the Office of Development, just to kind of get that breadth of perspective on what we had. And then we also did, like Patrick mentioned, some interviewing amongst our Office of Development colleagues. So some internal interviewing and workshops where we tried to understand from people all across the organization what their needs are, what their preferences are, and started to pull together an understanding of what kind of direction we wanted to go in, both in terms of content and actually visual preferences, and how we wanted to start thinking about the Office of Development in that visual way. And from those internal working sessions, we then were able to develop this voice and tone guide, which Patrick talked about a little bit. And getting all this stuff written down and really like nailing down these pillars of what we wanted the Office of Development to revolve around was then able to inform the rest of the work throughout the project. So that was a helpful guide. After doing that work, then we started thinking more about our audiences. So who are our users on the site? What do they need when they come to our site? What services are we providing them? So we developed some personas of our audiences who are, for the most part, alumni, parents. And we also did some journey mapping to start thinking about, well, what are they going to experience on the site? What paths do they need to take? How can we make that work for them? All that kind of stuff. So that was really a useful exercise for us. From there, we started thinking about our content map and mapping out the site based on everything we kind of pulled together, and thinking about how we could organize the site to work both for the Office of Development, but also for our users' needs. So this really kind of was our blueprint for that. From there, we were able to start thinking about filling out that map with our actual content. So we had a team of 4 writers who we got to work with on this project. We've created this master spreadsheet to kind of be our source of truth for all this different content we needed to develop. So basically, every page ended up being represented here, where we could track who was assigned to write the content. Did we have existing content, or was it something new? We would link off to all of the assets, photo ideas, and then actual copy. And so having this central place for all of that to be tracked was really helpful for us. And then as we had content getting started, we actually were concurrently then starting to think about design. So we kind of had a parallel track going of content and design. So design, we started really simple with like mood boarding and trying to pull out some of the things we had heard in our stakeholder workshops. From there, we moved into these like really kind of abstract visual directions, but just to start like nailing things down, like what colors might be feeling right for us, things like that. We were also starting to do some lo-fi wireframing to start pulling in the content we were starting to imagine needing on the site, and just doing simple wireframes to think about how we could accomplish that on the various pages that we were starting to develop. So this kind of sketching we started doing in Figma. And that is also where we started pulling in potential components that could solve for some of these content needs that we have. So we started with the Decanter system as a base for our component library, which was a huge leg up to get started on this stuff, and helps us be really pretty iterative and quick with being able to develop a lot of our basic components. So start with what was in Decanter and then kind of put our own flavor on it for the most part. So with some of that and getting built, we were pretty quickly able to then start moving into hi-fi wireframing, because we had already thought about the skeletons in our lo-fis. We put together enough components in theory from the Decanter system that then we could start actually like mocking up pretty realistic pages in Figma early on, which was helpful for us to really like nail down decisions about the content assumptions that we had started to be making, which was, happening all kind of at the same time. And then through that process, we were able to really nail down our visual guidelines, things like typography, colors, the kinds of things you see in Decanter. We had like kind of the OOD version established in Figma for ourselves. And then once we nailed that stuff down, we were able to then start mocking up true page layouts with real content. And again, we were still doing all of this in Figma because we weren't even in Storyblok yet. So doing this here, just like riffing with our designers and our developers in Figma made it just a fun process, but also just really fast and iterative. And I think was a huge reason that we were able to both develop the kinds of content that we were really happy with, but also do it quickly and hit our timeline and things like that as well. So once we got from those Figma mockups to a place where we were really happy with them, that is basically what we delivered to the developers. And that is where they took it away and did their magical work to actually build this content in Storyblok, which Shay will talk more about shortly. But having mocked up so clearly in Figma what we imagined and expected, what we got in the final in Storyblok was already so close that there wasn't a lot of back and forth needed once the developers got to this point. And that also made it for like a quick turnaround on all these pages and things like that. And just kind of like cleaning up at the end, we did distill all that work we did in Figma down into a pattern library that we now use ongoing as our design system. And with the first build that we launched in January, we considered it an MVP. We went ahead with as much as we had built, and some of the content wasn't in yet, and that was fine. And we launched and just considered it kind of like the starting place. And from there on, we've been building and iterating and basically considering our website like this living, breathing thing that we get to keep working on every day and improving upon, which continues to be really fun. So that was quick, but let's get into the back end stuff now with Shay.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
I get to share with you how we did stuff. All right, let me just get this set up here. Second. Thank you very much for highlighting the fact that websites are living, breathing things. They do change. They need to be iterative. They need to be, expand and shrink at times. Content changes. So I really want to talk about sort of those goals that we had in mind. So things like fast, things like visually engaging, things like delight for both the content author and the end user. And also being able to be flexible. So we were exploring a number of different ways to build out on a new website. So I'm going to introduce you to the Jamstack. Some of you know that, some of you don't. I'm going to talk a little about what the Jamstack is and sort of our selection process, and then we'll talk about how the actual site itself is assembled. So The Jamstack itself is a great tool for us as far as being able to provide those values that we just talked about. So Jamstack, unlike mean or lean or something, stands for JavaScript, APIs, and markup. So it's less of a technology stack, the traditional stack, but more of a sort of a methodology in how you build things. There's various different tools you can have in it. So LAMP being the traditional, Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP that kind of powers your whole monolithic application and delivers to the end user what you see. Jamstack typically is separated into two parts: a headless CMS, and so it has your data, your content, and then it has your front end, your visual, your templates, and your markup. It's sort of all brought together through JavaScript and APIs. Tend to say we've seen other Jamstack things built on other things other than JavaScript, but they're a little more rare. So I want to talk about a little bit about what Jamstack is and some of its core principles and why we use this. So some of the core principles of the Jamstack has things like pre-rendering. So we use static site generators, and they're a tool which can be run as part of a build, and it transforms content, data, and templates into files, which can then be deployed to a hosting environment and is a ready-to-serve HTML site. Decoupling, we use a headless technology. This is often used to describe a CMS where content can be entered, held, and how other content is displayed and decided, sort of separately of things. So we picked, I'll go into our selection of this, but we evaluated a number of different CMS tools. So many of you may be familiar with WordPress and Contentful or Drupal. We use one called Storyblock. I'll get into that, but that's important to know. We also run what we call atomic deploys. So with the Jamstack, you get sort of that separation of your front end and your back end in the same idea, but you have this concept of an atomic deploy. So the website that you visit is an immutable state. So what that means is it's always its version of it. So it never changes. So we've pre-rendered everything that you see. There's no on-the-fly calculations. There's no on-the-fly pulling of content. What you see is there. It is made, and it's sort of going back old school again. So we sit on a serverless platform. So that means there's sort of no back end. So the site that you are seeing is ran on a CDN, basically. And that's why it's so fast. It's sort of there's a new school way of building old school. And because you're getting HTML and CSS and JavaScript, and we're skipping a lot of different layers here. Why is the Jamstack a good fit for us? So we talked about some of the values earlier and things like being fast and stuff, but there's also some values for us selfishly as developers that we like to have as well. So we spend less time on doing things like security or worrying about performance tuning or maintenance and developer operations. We can spend way more time on things like the user experience and making things look good and empowering the content author to have options and things. So Alexis was showing the visual stuff in Figma, and you're right on the sense that the developer and build out relationships and the back and forth was actually really quick and just gentle for a word to use in that one. Because we had that planning as well. So it's really important that you make sure you have that planning. But we are able to use these technologies and build out very quickly, get live previews up there, and worry about less of all that sort of deeper sort of things you have to set up as far as architecture and stuff. So it's nice for a developer because we can really focus on making things work and look good. You'll see at the bottom our Lighthouse score for giving.stanford.edu. So thanks to everybody who worked on it. Big credit to our team at Web Services as well, but a little pat on the back. That was pretty good. It's quick and it's meeting expectations. It's important. Google is changing their search parameters, their search algorithm to include performance. So you want to be good friends with Google as far as being a search relevant. So keep that in mind. They're going to take things into that. There's a couple of stats actually about that. So not only is it good to be with Google, but your engagement with your content author as well. Sorry, your engagement with your end user. So a couple of stats that I pulled for this one. A website conversion rate drops by an average of 4.4% with each additional second of load time. It was important in 2019, a study from them. The probability of bouncing increases 32% as a page load time goes from 1 second to 3 seconds. Google found that in 2017. And as a page load time goes from 1 second to 10 seconds, the probability of a mobile site visitor bouncing increases by 123%. And that was Google in 2017 as well. So fast is really important these days. So you'll hear a lot of those individuals, like when you go to Jamstack conferences and people touting it, they're very, very focused on speed, both for the developers on how build times work, but also for the content, so the end user. And it is true. It is true. It's not everything, but it's very important. So what do we pick? So our tech stack. So we've evaluated a number of different tools out there, and we wanted something. So we're focused on websites. We're not going to be taking our content and putting it on billboards downtown. We're not super worried about maybe it may be in DS. We could, but it's not a focus. So we really wanted a content management system that did have a slight or a bias towards websites. So we evaluated Prism, WordPress, Drupal, Contentful, and then we ended up settling on a lesser known one called Storyblock. So they're actually out of Germany and Austria, but they had a really neat CMS tool and an interface that shows a live visual editor. We'll get into that in a demo a little later. But Storyblock is great. It's our CMS tool. It's a SaaS product. It has a visual editor, like I was saying. It uses GraphQL, REST APIs, and has an image optimization service as well. The UI of the service is built in Vue and is extensible, and it has an app ecosystem that we can add to. So it's a vendor SaaS product, but it does give you entryways in as a developer if you want to start to change and manipulate the interface as well. So that's nice. We chose Gatsby as our static site generator. So those are familiar with Next.js or Eleventy. It's one that's very popular with the Drupal world, sort of my background. So Gatsby is a really awesome static site generator, and it is it's client side and not server side. So it doesn't have server side rendering in it intentionally, because that helps with things being fast. So we use Gatsby to fetch content from Storyblock using GraphQL. We statically generate those pages, and then we host them on Netlify. So Netlify is our host. So Storyblock holds all the data and content. We use Gatsby and we build all our templates and markup using our design system Decanter. That's in there, and we render them out as a tool on Netlify, and we host it there. And Netlify we chose because they're a great hosting environment. So they have really fast host. They run serverless. So you can think of like, again, one big CDN. And they also have awesome developer tools. So they have things like build previews. So when we were working with Lexis Apache, we could send them links to things that wasn't in production yet. We could pull from content that was in a different Storyblock space, or we could be flexible. And it allowed us to get up and running really, really quick. We also chose Algolia as our search provider. So we also use another third-party SaaS product to power our search. So when we run our builds, we end up populating Algolia and have a live search that's on the site. So check that out, it's kind of neat. So yeah, we went headless. With static site generator, I don't know. Which is great actually, because it works really, really well and gives a lot of flexibility to both sides of the coin. So developers, content authors, and just even with things like lock-in, we can move around. We can swap out one of these two components-ish. Okay, so how do static site generators work? So I talked a little bit about that. So again, there's a difference between build time and request time. So in a traditional stack, you would see everything sort of happen on request time. So you would visit a website, you would make a request, it would go deep into the server, do all the calculations and permutations of fetching of data and massaging it, manipulate it, and do what I have to do, generate all the markup and structure of what you're going to see and send it to you. yes, you can put a CDN or varnish or caching or something in front of that, but generally that's what happens on a traditional stack. With static site generators, there's a difference. There's a build time and a request time. So we take all of those computations and all that heavy lifting that happens on that traditional stack, and we do it all way before you even get to the website. So we have a build time. So it ends up getting into, when we make a change and we want to publish some content or we want to send it, we pull data from Storyblock. We pull it through an API and we run it through Gatsby. It generates HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. That's it. We don't have PHP, we don't have Go, we don't have Ruby anywhere in the background. It is old school. These are HTML files. You could drag them in your browser in your local and run it on file protocol and see these things, and it works, which is great. So it develops these HTML files, JavaScript, but then we got to do something with it. We got to put them somewhere, and we put them on Netlify. So it's a host. So all of that pre-rendering and fetching of content and generation of everything happens before you get to that site. So your transaction, when you visit it, is simply asking the site for a few files, and it ships it back, which is great. Oop, go forward, not back. So Netlify, and being on a CDN, is able to take those files that you generated and actually replicate them across the world. So it's able to take that and put them in different nodes. So I think we're on a thing of 39 nodes. So not only do you have less transaction happening per request, but it's physically closer to you, reducing the amount of time it makes to make that request. So if things are actually closer, you don't have to, somebody in, I'm in Squamish, BC. So say we had our host somewhere over in, say, London, England, it would take a while to bounce around North America, go across the ocean, get the stuff and come back again. Like, that's pretty fast as far as like humans go, but it still takes some time. Whether, if there was a node just down the street from me, it would go there and get it and come back again. And we wouldn't have to worry about all that stuff in between. So it's pretty cool. Okay, so with that, so we talked about builds and people are editing content. We had, how many content authors did we have in there at one time, Alexis and Patrick? A few, maybe Dresden. Six, yeah. We had us working in there too, like maybe upwards of 10 to 12 people working all at the same time. So when that happens, the site gets built a lot. And that's okay. That's totally fine. Because talking about that atomic deploy before, so as these static site generators build the site, they build that set of HTML files and they ship it on the site and it just exists. So while that's sitting there, we can build a whole bunch of other stuff all the time and just keep it going. And once it's successful, we can push it live, clear all the caches across the world, and it's going. So the site is never in a state of like upgrade or mismatch between sort of states or if you've got an outdated module that you've updated some but not others, you won't have that. It's atomic. It's always going to be, and it's not going to fall down on you unless the underlying infrastructure falls down. So I had to get a pink starburst in here somewhere. This is how I'm going to do it. What happens? There's a couple events that trigger a build. So I'm going to talk about build time, rest time, request time a little bit more here, but how does the things get to you? So again, we've got code and we've got content. So we use Gatsby, we store it in GitHub, and we've got our content and it comes from Storyblock. When one of those two things changes, somebody publishes content on Storyblock or somebody pushes new code to GitHub, an event is fired. That then triggers Netlify to spin up a builder. It will then spin up on its own outside of the production website an environment that will then pull in the code, build the site, tell Gatsby to pull the content from Storyblock, generate all the HTML and CSS and files, but also do other tasks like create a sitemap XML, publish that, publish an index to Algolia's API. It can run other things. We also have other plugins and things that run that do things like scan the performance or do an accessibility audit or something. So a lot of these sort of CI/CD build tool type things you can start to bring into there. So it'll build everything and then we'll ship out our HTML, JavaScript, CSS, Netlify. It'll send our database index to Algolia. And then when you request a site, we actually serve all the heavy assets from Storyblock's assets service. So images and files, they come directly to you from their CDN. We run it through one of our proxies to give it a new name. But those heavier assets aren't a part of the build. It speeds up the builds, ships things, and you get them sort of from another raw source. So that's quick and easy and fast in that sense. All right, should we get in a live demo? We've got 4 minutes, so I gotta be quick on this one. Here's the Storyblock ad face. So it's going to take like 2.5 minutes to build. So I'm going to move this really fast. I'm sorry, taking my time here. So here's the Storyblock interface. We can create some new content. It has the concept of content types. It has a dashboard full of content. So I'm going to come down into here and go down to page 2 because I want to put things in the test items. I can create a new entry. We have a different, I'm going to call this one Hello Web Camp. Create test items. We have a bunch of different types of things that we can build: alerts, content menus, home pages. For today's demo, I'm going to use our interior page. It comes with presets. So we have pre-configured sets of things. It has content and components and a whole bunch of fun stuff on it. So let's pick a header with image in the left sidebar and hit save. I'm going to come into the visual editing interface, which is going to give me a live preview, which is building off of the live preview site. And then I can come in here, make some edits, say, let's see, join the Fundraising Grant Society. We'll go, hello, web camp. How are you today? Too long. How are you? Good. Let's go like that. Cool. Live editing. Hey, that's fun. I can click into things too and change images and move around and do stuff. So, oops. No, I don't want to go. Do you want to just go to changes? No, stay. But I can come into here. We've got a whole bunch of different content, images, change stuff up. But this is a nice sort of preset that I can run and leave it at that. All right. For the sake of builds, I'm going to hit publish. So item published successfully. I've got this path, test items / hello webcamp. So what actually happened is I published some content. I'm going to go over here to Netlify. So this is our giving.stanford. So you can see this is a list of our builds. We are currently now building one. So what happened was I published content on Storyblock. It fired a webhook over to Netlify to say, do the build. So it's currently building. You can come in here and see the log. It's going to take about 2.5 minutes. So I'm going to ramble. Hopefully we don't get kicked out of here. 1 to go. But this is spinning up the environment. This is loading plugins. So we actually run Lighthouse audits. When we run it, we also have a sitemap that submits things to Bing, Google, you name it. But this is what's going to build. And once this finishes building, we will see a live page that we just created on our production website. So that was test items. Going back, hello-web-camp. So there's going to be nothing there, just to prove. I didn't set this up beforehand. This is a live demo. We'll go page not found. We'll come back here. So it's doing things. So it's found the code. It's got a configuration files. It's loading some plugins that we've added. It's pulled content from our GitHub code repository. It's found out that it's a Gatsby build. So it's got some tuning just for Gatsby's. It's found out, oh, we've got pages. We've got a total of 494 things coming from Storyblock, total of 155 pages. And it's going to build all of those statically in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. This next part takes the longest as it's actually building and rendering out the files. So one of the things that we do is run sort of CSS and image optimization. So this one takes the longest, 58 seconds it took, because we try to do things like compile and reduce the amount of CSS that we have in there.
Although I'll say as a content editor, there is a preview option that you could see the page immediately in a preview if I don't want to build the full page or publish yet. This is actually really nice as well and these links we can share with stakeholders. They don't have to have a Storyblock account, so they could see it in a live preview as well.
Very cool. Yeah, thanks for that, Alexis. Okay, so it gathered a bunch of stuff to build, and we're done. Refresh the page. Oh, webcam, did I get that wrong? Yes, I did. Typo. Live demo. There we go. Yay. I see Adam Miller's happy about that. So am I. That's great. All right. That was live demo. We're over time. So sorry, Aaron. I always do this to you. But I want to open this up to questions that people may have if we've got some time.
So real quick, I just want to jump in. You may or may not get kicked off this session. I think we found out how to break Zoom. So there are questions in the chat.
Okay. Fire number one. Any concerns that Storyblock goes away? And then how do you move your site? So this more of a Storyblock as a company tanks it and disappears question? Who put that one in? That was
yes. Hi, my name's Eli. Yes, that's exactly it.
Okay, that's a good question. You can export all your content and configuration out of there. It is set up for Storyblock, so you're going to have to do some parsing. So Storyblock isn't as big of a player as some of the other ones out there. So there's less sort of already pre-built tools for you to do migrations. But you can export all your content configuration assets all out of Storyblock and do something with it.
Okay, thank you. So there's no automatic backups of that data for you, like, to S3 or something, just in case something drastic happens?
They do have an S3, so they have disaster recovery as well. So they've got their systems and their disaster recovery. They've allow you to do an offsite backup to S3 through one of their applications. We're finding that it's not as comprehensive of a backup as we want. So we're actually going to be, they provide CLI and all sorts of other APIs to do management, like admin management. So you can actually create your own backup routines and scripts. And we're actually in the process of just starting to do that. So we can scrape everything and ship it and then create a recovery process.
Got it. Thank you.
Cool. How do forms fit in? Good question. So where there is no server side on this type of setup. So if you want to capture form data, Netlify has the ability to do that. There's limitations to that one, but there's also services you can subscribe to. So if you want to build in forms, you can have your pick of form services out there. So you can pick your beast and work it into your code. It's at that point. Cache busting. That built in Gatsby, the cache clearing is instantaneous and brilliant. I don't know what black magic Netlify does sort of under the hood to it, but we've had no cache issues as far as writing. So you saw with that URL that was producing a 404, once I typed it in right, it was just there. It is instantaneous cache clearing, it's fantastic. So it's good, and I don't know how they do it, quite frankly.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Shay, for the CSS that defines the style of the individual Storyblock components and menus and such, does that live in Storyblock, or does it get defined and live in GitHub, or is it split between them?
All of the things that you see that create the visual side of things, so the CSS, the HTML. So that's, we use Gatsby, it's a React product. So it compiles using Webpack and it builds all the assets and it ships them all there. So it's all just a pile of regular files at the end of the day. We don't do any CSS manipulation in Storyblock. We have the approach where if we wanted to have visual changes like colored backgrounds or strokes or borders on components, we provide options, which then our components will then apply the appropriate CSS classes or things. in there. So there's no actual CSS coming from Storyblock. All the visual side of it is all from Gatsby in our front end, stored in our code base.
Okay, so when you are implementing what is designed on the graphic design side, that all just gets translated into Gatsby appropriate code, basically.
Yeah, Storyblock has no idea how we're actually going to visually render or what we're doing with any of that. They provide that visual editor that we've tied into, but all the visuals, yeah, it's all Gatsby. So we could actually take this technically and point this at another CMS tool, as long as they have similar API structures. Yeah.
How does that work in terms of the preview working in Storyblock, that being in sync with all the styles that are in Gatsby?
That's one special page that actually is doing live rendering. So that one has that one does a quick fetch. So they have a thing called Storyblock Bridge, which then you set up that does handle events from both sides of the editor and the preview. So it'll actually fetch data as it would during build time, but as real time for you, and refreshes the page as you go.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Good question. Thank you. Anybody else? Go for it if you got more. Yeah, there you go.
Just wanted to say thank you. This is very cool.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a really fun project to work on. Both Alexis and Patrick, but also the build. You know, these are shiny new tools. I still encourage you to. We did a lot of evaluation on picking these tools. It was a good fit for this project. I still encourage everybody to pick the right tool for the job. This is one. It is fun, and it was a good fit for us.
The thing that stood out to me besides the technical was that you used Figma and were able to play around, and it was, quote, fun to do the content. I've never heard that in a web project, so.
It was very fun.
Yeah.
And just being able to be hands-on with the components and the layouts before we were even set up on Storyblock was a huge benefit for the speed of this project. So Figma for the win. We're big fans.
Yeah, conceptually, we've got relationships between the design system in Figma and our code base. We're trying to keep things componentized. So reuse of components in Figma means reuse of components in code side of things, which helps accelerate both sides. It's great.
And there's a Decanter session tomorrow, Shay, right? If people want to learn more about
Oh,
that.
yes. If you're interested in learning more, please show up tomorrow.
Yeah.
When is it? Tomorrow at 1 p.m. So come join and find out what's all in the Decanter, what's all new and all the Decanter stuff. It's fun. All right, we'll call it there. We've held you far over time as it is. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Patrick and Alexis. Happy camp.
Thanks, everybody.